Disturbing live stream incidents, 7 levels. I've put together an iceberg of some of the most disturbing things ever caught on live streams.
Help! 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 Help!
We'll start with some of the less intense moments, but the deeper into the iceberg we get, the more disturbing things will become. Let's start at the tip of the iceberg. Level 1. Ginny TTY's phone gets stolen while on live stream. On January 23, 2023, Ginny TTY, a popular Korean IRL streamer, was walking down Buenos Aires' bustling Avenida Corrientes. She'd been in Argentina less than 24 hours, streaming her first day to thousands of viewers, when someone apologized for bumping into her. But the politeness was a ruse. A woman snatched the phone straight from Ginny TTY's hands while a male accomplice blocked her path. The phone continued to stream as the thief ran toward the subway entrance. But instead of accepting the loss, Ginny TTY did something that shocked even her own viewers. She chased after them. The pursuit led underground into Buenos Aires' Line B subway system, but while the thief was slow, the male accomplice continued to try to block her path. When she finally got into the subway tunnels, Ginny TTY caught up with the thief, screaming, "That's my phone, I'm streaming," to anyone who would listen.
I'm live streaming! I'm live streaming!
The commotion drew attention from bystanders, creating a crowd that gathered and helped corner the thief, who eventually released the phone and fled when people began holding her back. Ginny TTY got her phone back, but the Argentina incident was actually the beginning of a disturbing pattern that would repeat itself across South America. Just over a year later, on February 4th, 2023, Ginny TTY was 6 hours into a live stream in Chile when a motorcyclist on a blue bike ripped her phone away and sped off, despite her having it secured with a lanyard. It happened too quickly for her to even try to get it back. But even that wasn't the end of it. During a trip through Amsterdam in July 2023, she discovered 2 men had been working her bag while she spoke with them on camera. Fortunately, she had learned to keep valuables elsewhere, so the pickpocketing attempt came up empty. In France, a man on an electric scooter hit her phone and hurled racist slurs at her during a live stream in Toulouse. Each incident was captured live, broadcast to thousands as it unfolded. Her bad luck was unbelievable. Each theft was built on the success or failure of the last. It's almost like a challenge. Can they pull it off without the viewers noticing? iShowSpeed gets bitten by a snake on livestream. Darren iShowSpeed Watkins was in the Orangutan Esports OG Bootcamp in Navi Mumbai, live streaming to his followers around the world. But when he stepped into a green room alongside Indian creators Mythpat and Ujwal Gamer, his luck took an unfortunate turn because they wanted to put some animals on him, which he wasn't super into. First came an iguana, which clamped gently onto his shoulder. He was actually calm about that one, since there was no way an iguana would cause him much, if any, pain. But then they brought out the snake. The snake's handlers encouraged Speed to kiss the snake, which he clearly didn't want to do. When he finally did, it all went wrong. The snake lunged at him, managing to graze his lip, and Speed immediately jumped up to overreact in a typical YouTuber way. Around him, the local YouTubers were confused by how intensely scared he was, convinced it was a prank, which it probably was, but he was helped out of the room to get medical assistance just in case. Fortunately, the bite was superficial, so he was dealing with more shock or just overreaction than venom. Within minutes, he was back behind the camera, cracking jokes as though nothing had happened. Of course, the clip flooded Twitter and TikTok, and memes sprang up overnight with snakes in handcuffs, emergency sirens repeating, "Speed is dead." Later, he jumped into a gaming lobby, flexing a makeshift bandage. Nobody really took it seriously, of course. Twitch streamer Shiori live streams a magnitude 7.5 earthquake. New Year's Day 2024 was supposed to be quiet for Shiori, a small Twitch streamer in Niigata with just over 2,000 followers. She'd started her streaming journey only 2 months earlier, hosting casual, just chatting sessions from her room. But 6 minutes into what should have been an ordinary holiday broadcast, her phone started buzzing with an emergency alert. She held up her device to the camera as an AI-generated voice blared warnings in Japanese. It was an earthquake notification. Already an intense thing to wake up to, but what came next was even worse. Shiori looked directly at her viewers and said, "I've got to go."
That's a big one.
Earthquake. Earthquake.
Oh my god, it's big. I gotta go outside.
As she vanished from frame, the room began violently shaking, but the live stream kept rolling. And the viewers who were watching got a front row seat to the earthquake and its carnage. For more than 40 seconds, the camera captured everything. The trembling walls, the sound of collapsing objects. This earthquake would later be measured at magnitude 7.6, an intensity registered as Shindo 7 on Japan's seismic scale, the maximum possible rating. Anything that was not bolted down was flung around like toys. When Shiori finally returned to her camera after 2 agonizing minutes, she was breathing hard but alive. She confirmed that she and her family were safe, but she and everybody watching knew that not everybody would have been so lucky. In fact, the earthquake had torn through the Noto Peninsula with some crazy damage. The ground itself lifted by as much as 13 feet in some coastal areas. A 7-story building in Wajima toppled sideways while entire neighborhoods burned. The death toll eventually reached over 600 casualties. The footage went viral almost immediately, accumulating near 170,000 views in less than 24 hours. Shiori later revealed that the earthquake was her 4th major seismic experience, having lived through the devastating 2004 and 2007 Chutsu earthquakes, plus the catastrophic 2011 Tohoku earthquake that killed nearly 20,000 people. She had a lifetime of getting used to these things. Whenever they happened, she immediately went to check on her family, especially her grandparents. The 60-year-old building where she lived with her grandparents had survived, but thousands of others hadn't. Across the affected region, 193,529 structures suffered damage, while entire communities found themselves cut off as mountain roads cracked and became impassable. The economic impact would eventually reach $10 billion, making it one of the costliest disasters of 2024. And all of it was captured on this very stream. Level 2. Bosco 100 gets shot at on Instagram Live. Bosco 100 is one of hip-hop's most provocative figures, notorious for his bold, troublemaking mix of gang politics, eager confrontation, and unfiltered commentary, and the fact that he's very much in with the Queen Street Bloods. During this stream, he was sitting in his house engaging with viewers in his typical confrontation style when gunshots suddenly blasted just outside his window, so close they seemed to be right next to him. He couldn't even hide his reaction on the stream. Bosco immediately went into defensive mode. His first instinct was to turn off all the lights in his house, plunging himself into darkness as he tried to assess whether he was the target. For years, he had stoked the fire, fueling confrontations with others. Suddenly, he found himself in one. Bosco later discovered that the shots weren't aimed at his house specifically, but the proximity and timing felt too coincidental. He was convinced that someone was watching his streams, retaliating for the things he said about other rappers or gangs. After all, he didn't make it hard to track himself. Following the incident, Bosco's entire approach to streaming changed dramatically. Bosco was so hyper-aware of his vulnerability that he stopped going live while walking around his neighborhood, recognizing that broadcasting his location in real time was essentially providing a roadmap for anyone wanting to harm him. For many people, they couldn't believe how vulnerable Bosco had become when he was in danger, how he suddenly shifted from a bold, controversial presence into a genuinely terrified young man. He never streamed the way he did before. He was too aware of how close to death his streams had brought him. The fun had become too disturbing, which just happens to be what we make videos about. So if you want more fun-turned-disturbing videos, why not hit that subscribe button? Level 3. Twitch streamer nearly burns her kitchen. Kelly Karen is a mechanical engineering graduate, but this stream suggested that cooking was maybe not her thing. She was celebrating her 26th birthday by attempting to cook a steak live on Twitch, but it had already gone wrong even when the stream began. The pan on her stove was overheating, filling the room with thick, dangerous-looking smoke. She removed the steak from the oil-soaked pan with tongs, trying to salvage what was left of her birthday meal. But when she tried fanning the smoke away with her hands, she was essentially feeding oxygen to a fire waiting to happen. Unfortunately, that mechanical engineering degree apparently didn't teach her about the danger of heat transfer and combustion. The oil in the pan erupted into flames, causing a sudden fiery explosion that sent her into immediate panic as the fire alarm started shrieking. She didn't know what to do as her kitchen started to combust. In her panic, she grabbed the flaming pan and carried it to the sink, even though the flames were going nuts. But she was seconds away from making the most catastrophic mistake possible. She turned on the water. The combination of water and burning oil creates an explosive reaction, the flames erupting into a much larger blaze that sent her stumbling backward. She had just demonstrated exactly what fire safety experts warn against most. Water on a grease fire causes the flames to spread more. Now, she really did not know what to do. The flames were now bigger than when she started, the kitchen filling with more smoke, and she was completely out of options. So she flung the pan back onto the stove, the fire still raging, and made another critical error. She did nothing. All she did was scream for help.
Help! 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 Help!
That inaction could have led to the fire spreading to cabinets, walls, or neighboring apartments. Her neighbors were now at risk because she had left a grease fire burning on a stove. Or not, because the fire was literally extinguishing itself as she ran around screaming. Anyone with basic cooking knowledge knew this would be the case, but at least she managed to get through her day without burning the house down. Her father, who had been watching the live stream, immediately sent her fire safety equipment, including a fire blanket, fireproof gloves, and spray designed for oil fires. The incident was captured and shared across social media, with people watching as she demonstrated every mistake possible when dealing with a kitchen fire. She had an engineering degree, but it didn't stop the panic. By the way, if this happens to you, put a lid on the fire to cut off all oxygen, or maybe spread some baking soda on it if you don't have a fire extinguisher. Be safe, folks. Ice Poseidon pepper sprayed during live stream. In October 2023, Paul Danino, better known as Ice Poseidon, was doing an IRL stream on a Melbourne street corner with fellow content creator Sam Pepper, capturing whatever randomness happened to unfold. Behind them, a strange man approached, face concealed by a mask, having tracked their location through the live stream itself. Before Ice Poseidon realized, the pepper spray hit him directly in the eyes at point-blank range. His stream kept running as he screamed out to the audience, not sure if he had been pepper sprayed temporarily or permanently blinded by acid. The attacker tried to run away, but Ice Poseidon's buddies were on him, chasing the guy to a set of stairs where the attacker stumbled and fell, giving Sam the opportunity to tackle him to the ground. So right there on stream was a citizen's arrest playing out for the entire world. The attacker was held in an arm lock while Ice Poseidon demanded answers about what he did. The effects of pepper spray typically last 45 minutes, so his inability to open his eyes was going to last for a while, effectively ruining the entire stream. The attacker was held the entire time as emergency services and police were called, but Ice Poseidon was not going to give up on his demands for answers. Eventually, the attacker claimed that he didn't pepper spray ice. It was sparkling water, but that was a lie. Within a few seconds, he walked it back and said it was pepper spray, offering a hollow apology for the pain he had inflicted on the streamer. When the police arrived, they arrested the attacker for what constituted an unprovoked attack with an illegal weapon. Australia's laws treat pepper spray as a prohibited item, so this was a criminal offense, not a so-called prank. But the incident marked the third time Ice Poseidon had faced physical confrontation during his Australian streaming tour, and it seemed like it wasn't going to end. After the incident, the stream continued even as Ice Poseidon waited for medical attention, presumably so he could capture the scene if someone dared try again. Because with the amount of attention this guy got, it's very likely someone else would try. Rob CD attacked by a stranger while streaming. Rob CD is better known as the Angel of Shibuya for his countless acts of kindness towards strangers. But on this night in Tokyo, he wasn't going to get any kindness shown to him. Not even a little bit. Rob was in the middle of an IRL stream in a Tokyo bar, sweeping his camera around to make a pan shot for his viewers, highlighting the incredible culture of Japan. It was nothing more than simply documenting the atmosphere. Unfortunately, not everybody agreed. One of the bar's patrons noticed the camera was pointing in his direction, and he didn't like that. Rather than asking politely, he demanded that the camera be taken off him. Being the nice guy that he is, Rob tried to explain that the filming wasn't intentional and that he hadn't meant to record the stranger specifically. That didn't go down well. Now the stranger was just straight up angry. The stream caught the moment that the stranger aggressively shoved Rob, who tried to de-escalate the situation, tried to show this guy that he wasn't looking for a fight. But then the man lunged forward and tried to yank the phone directly from Rob's hands, drawing the attention of the other patrons. The stranger's friend finally intervened, stepping between the two men as the situation threatened to spiral further out of control. Viewers had to listen to the confusing, frantic audio as the stranger's friend worked to diffuse the tension, while Rob attempted to process what had just occurred. Rob hadn't done anything out of the ordinary or openly rude. He had just tried to capture the moment as he usually does. But this stranger was unusually worked up about something. His extreme reaction to being briefly caught on camera suggested he had something to hide, as if he wasn't supposed to be there. In a classic case of the Streisand effect, he had drawn more attention to himself fighting against it than if he had done nothing at all. In the aftermath, Rob retrieved his equipment as the situation gradually calmed, leaving and heading off into the night, presumably to find somewhere a little less intense to wrap up his stream. Level 4. Quiet Lola kissed by a stranger on Livestream. On the night of January 6, 2022, Quiet Lola was streaming on the streets of her hometown, Dusseldorf, chatting with viewers through her live feed on an IRL broadcast as she explored the city. By this time, she'd already encountered one uncomfortable situation earlier that night. While she was standing near a lit-up building, she casually mentioned how frustrating it was when strangers disrupted her content like that, and how it tends to ruin the entire evening. She was clearly irritated by the whole thing. Unfortunately, it was about to happen again. The second stranger approached. He asked to say hello to her for a second, and despite her obvious irritation, Quiet Lola was polite and friendly, welcoming the interaction in the belief that he was one of her viewers. She tilted the camera toward him, allowing him to address her audience, something that she had done often before to create some memorable content moments. Yeah, this guy wasn't gonna do anything normal. The man's hand moved toward her camera equipment, forcing her to pull it back and make it clear that wasn't going to happen. He could say hello, but she was going to hold the camera, the last bit of control she had over the situation. After all, it wasn't the first time this had happened. Unfortunately, he didn't respect that boundary. Instead, he leaned closer, invading her personal space, and without warning, without permission, pressed his lips against hers right there on camera for the whole world to see. It was an insane breach of personal space. Quiet Lola angrily shoved him away with both hands, her voice exploding with fury, but the guy didn't really care. Off camera, he said it was just a joke, as if those words could somehow erase what had just happened. The guy walked off to continue with his day as though it didn't happen. But Quiet Lola's day was ruined, just as she predicted. She cried on stream, asking why she had to be the one who left everywhere just because she's a woman. The stream continued, but the vibe had changed after the incident. The guy who committed the crime was never identified or found, but he reaffirmed Quiet Lola's view on humanity generally, as she told her viewers, "I hate humans." Streamer Garrett punched in the face twice. It was 2 a.m. on July 28, 2023, and the South Korean streamer Garrett was broadcasting live to his audience across YouTube and Kick as he walked down Jomtien Beach in Pattaya. The beach was totally empty, save for scattered groups of locals who made their living renting beach chairs and mats to tourists during the daylight hours. Garrett walked past the group of Thai men, his camera picking up the whole thing. But among the group was a young man named Anupong who noticed the lens pointing in their direction. He aggressively demanded that Garrett stop filming immediately, but Garrett dismissed it. He didn't take a video of them, They just happened to be on the edges of the frame. Anupam got angrier by the minute, pointing his finger at Garrett, who responded by raising his middle finger in return. Now, to most of us, that kind of thing would be pretty typical, but in Thailand, this gesture carries particular weight that Garrett may not have fully understood. The curse words flew back and forth until Anupam finally asked Garrett if he wanted to fight. Garrett couldn't understand what the hell was happening, but even when Anupam gave him the opportunity to walk away, he didn't. He stayed and asked, "What do you want?" Those 4 words sealed what came next. The moment he finished speaking, Anupam's fist connected closer, landing his own punch to Garrett's face. Even on the live stream, you could hear the sound of the impacts. The second stumbled away from his attackers, his hand moving instinctively to his injured nose, but he never stopped streaming, talking his viewers through what had just happened, even as the blood kept flowing. Another foreign tourist appeared and intervened before Garrett could return to confront his attackers, telling him it's not worth the trouble. Those words probably saved Garrett from further violence or maybe even death. When the tourist police arrived, both Garrett and his attackers were taken to the station, where Garrett continued recording audio even after authorities ordered him to turn off his camera. After the whole thing was done, the Thai men who had punched Garrett were released without facing any legal consequences, but police prepared to fine the streamer 34,000 baht for filming in public without permission. Essentially, in Thai law, it was the victim's fault. He was asking for it. Pokemon player gets sucker punched and violently robbed. Ricky Bot was hanging around Central Park South at 12:20 a.m., already a pretty terrible idea, but he wasn't technically there alone. He was streaming to his Twitch viewers from an elaborate 3-phone setup, the kind of contraption that screams expensive target to anybody looking to rob someone. Even worse, he was too busy hunting for a Snorlax, completely absorbed in the virtual world, while the real one was closing in behind him. Ricky had been doing these Pokemon streams for 10 nights in a row, building a clear and predictable routine that anybody could follow. At one point in the stream, he looked into the camera and said those fateful words, "Look at me, just a lazy Pokemon player." They would be the last fun words he would say in the stream. Behind him, a young man in his late teens or early 20s approaches, wearing what looks like a GoPro or flashlight mounted on his forehead. The audience saw him before Ricky could have, but no matter how much they tried to warn him, the delay was too much. In seconds, the attacker used either a chokehold or a direct punch to Ricky Bot's throat and jaw area, sending him collapsing to the floor as his elaborate phone rig crashes down around him. All that we as the viewers can hear is, "No, no, no, please, no." The robber, in full view of Ricky's followers, demanded the setup. The robber's face was fully visible to the viewers by this point, forced to watch as the stream was essentially handed over to a criminal. Obviously, this guy had been watching and waiting for his opportunity. Ricky's predictability made him the perfect target. The expensive equipment was really just a bonus. The thief fled into the darkness of the park, apparently unaware that one of the phones was still streaming. For 30 crucial seconds, the stream keeps running as he escapes, not knowing that his face was captured in perfect clarity for evidence. Ricky's followers called 911 immediately, and the police soon found him with a grotesquely swollen jaw, head lacerations, and elbow scrapes. The damage was severe enough that he needed a straw to drink. But despite having the perpetrator's face broadcast to thousands and providing clear video evidence to investigators, no arrests were ever made. The suspect, described as 6 feet tall, wearing a black t-shirt and red shorts, just vanished. Got away with the whole thing. Level 5. Rebecca Casserly robbed while live streaming. Rebecca Casserly stepped out of her flat on a Tuesday morning in September 2016. Phone in hand, ready for her coffee scope, a daily ritual that had become her favorite part of every day for nearly 18 months. Over 3,000 viewers tuned in to watch her walk from her house to the tube station, chatting about her plans as she headed toward her usual coffee stop near Highbury and Islington Station. Rebecca's setup was pretty simple. She held her phone with a grip attachment, earphones dangling as she broadcast live to her community. But then a figure on a bicycle appeared, cycling directly onto the sidewalk toward her. The man rode straight up to her and, with violent force, snatched the phone from her hands and cycled off into the distance. But the stream continued. Viewers could hear Rebecca's terrified scream, then watch the screen go black as the phone disappeared into the thief's pocket, taking those thousands of viewers along for the ride. Only when he eventually pulled the device from his pocket and switched it off did the broadcast finally terminate. Rebecca's followers were ready. Screenshots were captured by viewers who managed to grab images of the perpetrator's partially visible face before the stream ended. Rebecca's mother, watching live from Ireland, experienced the helplessness of witnessing her daughter's incident from hundreds of miles away. The police response took over an hour. When officers finally arrived, they explained that phone theft receives low priority since no physical injury occurred. In fact, this wasn't even the first case they were dealing with. The officer who responded told Rebecca this was already the third phone stolen by that same thief that morning. These bicycle gangs target rush hour periods, cycling through busy areas to snatch phones from unsuspecting victims. The thief who robbed Rebecca was simply working his regular route, treating phone theft like any other job. She just happened to walk right into him. Rebecca had a lot of supportive messages from her followers who shared their screenshots in the hope she could find justice. But she found herself watching the replay of her own robbery repeatedly, each viewing bringing back the fear. The experience left her too shaken to continue her beloved morning broadcasts from the street. That one stream changed everything for her. Nils Legend robbery attempt while streaming. Nils Legend was streaming Counter-Strike to his nearly 50,000 Twitch followers on a typical Saturday night when he and viewers began hearing a noise in the background. Somebody was at the door knocking to try to get in. At first, Nils ignored it, focusing only on his game, but minutes went by and the knocking just would not stop. He had assumed it was neighbors or a delivery, something mundane that would pass. The knocking was growing more aggressive and demanding until he could no longer ignore it. He had to get up and see what exactly was going on. The stream continued running as he disappeared from view, the game still active. He had told his viewers that the neighbors were at the door. What he didn't know was that the knock at the door was not from his neighbors. Viewers could hear the exact moment that the door was violently forced open, followed by Nils' confused, strained voice asking, "What are you doing?" over and over again. 3 masked figures had entered his apartment, moving through his space with no clear plan beyond being inside. Nils couldn't process what was going on. None of it made any sense. And the whole time, his viewers were helpless, forced to watch as it unfolded. Realizing that his audience was still there with him, Nils got back on camera, believing it would dissuade them. His wife and child thankfully weren't home, but he was terrified that he was going to be physically harmed by these aggressive men. When Nils threatened to contact police himself, the masked intruders finally decided to leave, but they didn't go empty-handed. On their way out, they grabbed 3 expensive designer jackets. It seemed more like an afterthought than anything else. The stream ended abruptly after the invasion. Police arrived shortly after midnight and found snow tracked throughout the apartment, the only evidence that the traumatized Nils could initially show them. The incident left Nils with a lot of trauma and anxiety, terrified that his home would once again be invaded while his family was there. Within days, he decided he had to move to another city entirely. His home was no longer a home. No arrests were made. The investigation continued, but the masked men just couldn't be found. There was no way to identify them. Level 7. Ms. Bandit violently robbed while streaming. Sterna, better known as Ms. Bandit, was streaming Call of Duty Warzone from her home in Centurion, South Africa. It was almost 11 p.m. and she was so focused on her game, headphones on, that she almost didn't notice 3 armed intruders breaking into the house. Her boyfriend Mario was the first to be confronted by the intruders. At almost the same moment, one of the intruders came up behind Sterna, pulled off her headphones, and ordered her to the ground. For a split second, she thought it was one of her sons, but then she saw the pistols. The robbers didn't mess around, ordering Sterna and Mario to get on the floor. Sterna, thinking quickly, tells them her sons are in the next room and asks that they be brought in, not wanting any surprises. The robbers actually agreed to do that, bringing in her children. The family was told to lie down, keep quiet, and not move as they were tied up with shoelaces and electrical cords. It was obvious by now that these intruders had a clear plan of action about what they wanted to do. They moved through the house, gathering valuables, electronics, phones, watches, placing them by the garage door, and even opening up the family's cars, apparently planning to load up and leave with everything. The whole time, the stream continues to run, capturing the scene as it unfolds. The robbers continually promise not to harm the family so long as they comply with their demands and do not resist. Outside the home, a friend who lives in the same estate noticed something was wrong. Mario had stopped talking on TeamSpeak without saying goodbye, which is unusual. The friend tried to call both Sterna and Mario, but the robbers had already turned off their phones. Sensing something was off, the friend drove to the house. Hearing unfamiliar voices in the garage, he alerted estate security. The robbers, realizing they're out of time, abandoned most of the valuables they'd gathered and fled the scene. Police and private security followed soon after, summoned by both the friend and other gamers who witnessed the incident unfold online. In the end, the robbers escaped with only a few items, 3 smartphones and some smartwatches. The family, though shaken, was physically unharmed. The stream came to an abrupt end, but thankfully, the situation did not get as bad as it could have been. Gimpy G house catches on fire while live streaming. On October 30th, 2021, Lance Carr, a quadriplegic streamer who went by Gimpy G online, was in his gaming chair in Fort Morgan, Colorado, streaming Diablo 2 Resurrected. Because of his muscular dystrophy, Lance could only move his face and head, controlling his computer with specialized adaptive equipment, including a quad-stick controller operated by mouth movements. His house, which he had owned for 35 years, had been carefully modified to accommodate his disability, featuring every necessity element, including ramps, widened doorways, and accessible bathrooms. On his stream, everything was normal, until someone off-screen rushed in and told him they had to call emergency services. Their garage was on fire. Lance had to evacuate the house immediately. Lance's stream was still running as his nephew Trenton moved him out of the room, leaving behind the computer setup to keep streaming the scene as it unfolded. Within minutes, smoke began creeping into the room, but nobody knew if Lance had made it out alive. The room was just disappearing behind this thick wall of smoke. The fire had started in the garage, but it quickly spread to the attic and throughout the house. The blaze was so intense that it destroyed not just the house, but also 3 vehicles parked outside, including Lance's wheelchair-accessible van that had been positioned in front of the garage. That van was the only way Lance could leave his home, and because it only had liability insurance, the family would receive no compensation for the loss. Lance's specialized gaming equipment was also destroyed in the fire. His expensive quad-stick controller was gone. So was his computer setup, his streaming equipment, and all the adaptive technology he relied on for communication and entertainment. For someone whose physical limitations meant gaming was his primary link to the world, the loss was devastating. The family of 5 members and 8 pets all made it out alive, but the aftermath was brutal. The house was gone, the family lost everything they owned, leaving them forced to stay in a hotel without the adaptive equipment Lance needed for basic daily activities. A GoFundMe campaign was set up to help replace Lance's adaptive equipment and assist the family with immediate needs. The gaming community rallied around the story, with streamers and viewers sharing the fundraising page. So at least, if nothing else, Lance's viewers had his back. If you still want more disturbing icebergs, check out this video on the most disturbing internet mysteries.